To the Rays, they're good-sized favorites in this game. No more value plays on Tampa Bay.
No, they're not. And this was a very good formula for the Rays last year, doing the starter by, get the starter and then go bullpen by committee. And I agree with you, it'll be Yarborough in second most likeliness, because I actually saw him listed a couple places as the starter, and then they switched to Stanek, which is the formula they did last time.
The books are going to have to decide what to do with this. I think they're doing the right thing, which is just not bothering to post an overnight until they have an idea who's going to see the bulk of the pitching for Tampa in the morning, and then you put the line up.
And how about Colorado, Dave? We're only a couple games into the season. They went out and signed Daniel Murphy for the contract.
Yeah, got hurt.
And he's going to be out now with a fractured left index finger. Tampa's got a couple guys out of the lineup as well. Wendell and Duffy both have hamstring injuries as well. They're out of the lineup.
Duffy's always hurt. He is. I mean, he's just always on the DL, or IL as they call it now.
But I agree. Tampa is the side here, but you're not getting any break on the price. Little stat for you. I know a lot of guys don't like this, talking about days of the week, Dave, but I do, because it shows character. When you're talking about teams on Monday and Tuesday, a lot of times teams don't come to play with the same intensity. The Rays did 13-3 last year on Mondays. I'll take the Rays.
Chuck Esposito from Sunset Station Casino is joining us right now. Howdy, Chuck. How are you?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you?
Good. Getting a chance to relax a little bit after a frantic weekend, I would assume?
A little bit. I don't have any fingernails left after watching some of those games, but it was a great weekend. I think, the crowds, the atmosphere, just the electricity in the books is contagious throughout the casinos. I think the economic impact here as well, with everyone coming out and just having a great time, is second to none. And overall, I think it was great. You've got Michigan State. You've got Virginia, who I didn't think most people thought would be the number one that was still standing, and two schools that have never been to the Final Four before. So it's all the excitement, I think, that the madness of March it hypes up to be.
How did the weekend go as far as the win-loss for the bettors at Sunset Station?
Not just for Sunset. I think overall, handle was considerably up, but it was a good weekend on our side of the counter. Anytime you've got perennial powers like Duke and Kentucky fall, it's good for us, and not just fall but lose outright. Where we talked about a week ago, where you had 16 favorites win on the money line on Saturday and Sunday. That wasn't the case this weekend, and I know we've talked about it, guys. You think about the one and dones of Kentucky and Duke, and sometimes they're ill prepared to pull from past experiences, because they're constantly replenishing with great young freshman classes that just aren't there. And the freshman class of Duke, if they're there for 3 or 4 years, I mean, look out, but that's not going to be the case.
No, it sure isn't. Those days are done. Quick update, Cardinals and Pirates are going to extras, tied at 5, and the White Sox and Indians are scoreless in the bottom of the 4th at Cleveland. So let's get your breakdown, your early breakdown, on what's coming up in the Final Four, starting with Texas Tech, Michigan State.
Well, I mean, I think you look at Michigan State. They knocked off Duke. I think you could have made a case that they could have been the 4th number 1 seed. So a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. And then, I mean, you just can say Tom Izzo. Izzo at this time of year is so dangerous. He's one of those coaches that when you give them time to prepare, they're just so good. On the flip side, Texas Tech. I mean, I don't think anybody expected, Texas Tech after the Elite Eight appearance last year, that with the guys that they lost would be in this position, and they are. If you're a Rebel fan, you're thinking of what could have been with Chris Beard, but that's not the case. Texas Tech is really good. Culver is so good. They're a talented team. I think it's going to be a great matchup. I think, had you had Texas Tech and Virginia playing, you would have had probably maybe a lower total than Virginia, Oregon. But a little bit of a contrast in styles, not quite as much as the second game we're going to talk about. But I think it's a great game to watch. And, again, it's Tom Izzo with time to prepare. So it's not going to surprise me to see this number start to tick up a bit, guys.
Guys, I've made the point over the weekend that while Chris Bird has certainly done an awful lot at Texas Tech, I don't think he enjoys this success unless for the experience that he gained during his amazing run here at UNLV.
Never lost the game.
That's right.
You actually made me laugh. That's pretty good.
Hey, Chuck, before we go to the second game, Auburn, Virginia, when I saw the numbers come out, surprised me a little bit when I saw the one total. I was a little bit shocked at the Texas Tech-Michigan State game came out 2 points higher than the Auburn-Virginia game. When you think about it, I mean, the common denominator between the Final Four is 3 of the 4 teams are outstanding defensively. And it's not Auburn, okay? It's the other 3. And so you got 2 defensive teams here in Texas Tech and Michigan State, and yet we're looking at a 132.5. Just to me, from the naked eye and my initial gut reaction, I thought that came out a little high.
Well, I think you look at Texas Tech, and they had a stretch of, late in the season where they had hit over 80 points in several games. And I agree with you. I think that 3 of the 4 teams, and we know it's not Auburn, can play some defense. I just think you look at Texas Tech and their style of play a little bit in Michigan State, and I think you can see a little bit more scoring here. I mean, not to say that, we're right. The bettors will tell us by the time that game tips next Saturday if the number was too high or too low. But I think the reason is because Texas Tech can muster some offense, and I don't think that they will control tempo as much as, say, maybe Virginia will try to against Auburn.
In going to that Virginia-Auburn game, you've got Virginia here. This is the classic, opposite styles.
Yes.
Auburn wants to go up and down the floor. They want to put up some threes. Virginia, they've been for the last several years one of the best defensive teams in the country. How do you see this one? Which style prevails?
Well, the funny thing is that we're even talking about Virginia. Not that they didn't deserve to be a number 1, but I think everybody thought it was a foregone conclusion that if you had a number 1 left, it was going to be Duke or Carolina. If you had multiple number 1s left, it was going to be Duke and Carolina. So the fact that Virginia, the number 1 overall seed last year, who was ousted, with the first time that it ever had happened, is still standing, I think you give Virginia a little bit of credit for that. I think they're a much better team offensively with Guy, Jerome, and Hunter. They are going to try to dictate tempo. There's no question about it. I think you look at Auburn, and, a little bit unexpected that they're there without Okeke. I thought it took them at least almost the first half to get into a rhythm against Kentucky. I know he was only their third leading scorer, but what he did on the glass, how good he is on both sides of the court, being their top rebounder, I thought they had to get used to it knowing he's not there. And once they kind of got past that, they played a great game. But it is a huge contrast in style for these 2 teams. So it's going to be interesting the way that they play, and it'll be fun. I think both games are fun. I mean, you look at the coaches who are left, and Pearl is so animated on the sideline and a little bit more reserved than Tony Bennett. But overall, I think, guys, it's going to be fun for our side of the counter, and I like the way it kind of shook out. It doesn't surprise me at all that Virginia's there. I had them in the Final Four in my bracket.
Chuck, how much of a swing in money was it on those 2 foul shots at the end of the game for the Virginia game? Because there had to be a lot of moans and groans and a few happy people. I fortunately was one of the happy ones, but I think there were a lot more unhappy.
There was. I mean, that finish was just unbelievable. I happened to be standing around some Purdue guys, and they looked pretty shocked. I mean, they were speechless. It was it was tough for them to handle. Every Purdue guy that I know, and I've got some good friends who graduated from there, and some family who attends there, and they were all pretty stunned. But there definitely was some oohs and ahs on those free throws, but it's all part of it, and I think that's what makes the tournament so great. And as I mentioned when we first came on the air, it's tough to find any fingernails left, guys, because these games were so much fun, and every one of them had runs and great finishes. It just was exciting overall this past weekend.
And if you've got fingernails left, well, they won't last for long, because we know now who the Golden Knights will be playing in the first round. It was anticipated that it would be the San Jose Sharks. Nothing changed down the stretch. Neither of these teams has played well. But, quite frankly, the games haven't meant a whole lot. This is an interesting week for the Golden Knights in that the games don't mean anything, including tonight's game against Edmonton. But there is something that does mean something, Chuck. They've got to get Fleury back in goal, healthy, and showing that he's ready to go for the playoffs, don't they?
They absolutely do. I mean, if you haven't read or heard or seen it yet, he was on the ice today at City National, so I think that's a good sign. I really think it was partially rest. He may have been dinged up a little bit, but he had logged more ice time than any other starting goalie in the league. I think he needed some rest, and I think once you realized you were kind of locked in, even though they were within 5 points of San Jose and they had a game to play San Jose, it still was going to be a monumental task to supplant them in the number 2 position. You never want a team that's limping into the playoffs, not playing their best in any sport, but you do want them to kind of be their healthiest. And I go back to that 7-game streak when Stone was there and how well they played, after the trade deadline. I don't think it's overly concerning. You just want to be one of 8. I think they're playing it, as good as the Sharks or better over the last, several weeks. I know they've hit a little bit of a speed bump, but again, not overly concerned once you get Fleury back. In my opinion, I think it's a great matchup between these two teams, both almost identical home records, almost identical point differentials, a little bit of chippiness to the game the last 2 times that they've played, which I think will carry over in the playoffs. And both barns are probably in the top 5 as the toughest places for opponents to play. So home ice advantage is going to be huge for both the Knights and Sharks.
But you know what's interesting is that I think the Golden Knights took the right strategy down the stretch. Would it have been nice to catch San Jose and grab the home ice? Yeah, but I'd rather see them fresh because, quite frankly, getting one extra home game means less in the NHL playoffs than any other sport. It's just not a big home ice deal as far as the playoffs are concerned. The team that stays hot and has the best goaltending is going to win the NHL playoffs. So to me, it was more important to do exactly what you said in terms of Fleury, get him rested and ready for the playoffs. And if he's ready to go, it's a big edge for the Golden Knights in goal over San Jose, because the Sharks' goaltending is not good.
It absolutely is. And, even if they could have caught the Sharks, I mean, you're expending a tremendous amount of energy at that point. It's been weeks, if not longer, that we kind of all felt they were locked into number 3. I still think that they have a huge advantage between the pipes if Fleury is rested and healthy over Jones and Smith, or if Calgary decides to go with the committee. I think from an experience standpoint, both the Sharks and Knights have more experience than a young Calgary team, who I think Calgary, might have their hands full a little bit if it's Colorado, as well as they're playing right now and the way that Colorado can score. I think there's only 3 teams in the Western Conference that have scored more goals. So Colorado and Calgary could be a wide-open, fast-paced game. I think it's fine that they got that rest. You'd like to see them get a couple of wins, at least get a win with the 3 games left before the postseason starts. But again, for me, guys, I'm not overly concerned because you have games without Pacioretty. You may have Stastny without games. And I think at this time of year, it's so important to get some of these guys who've logged a lot of minutes, especially Fleury, some rest before the postseason starts.
Chuck, looking ahead, obviously we have the NBA playoffs and the hockey playoffs, but we also have some big events coming up. You've got the Masters. You've got the Triple Crown with the Kentucky Derby going to be just a little over a month away. How's that thing's shaping up at stations?
Everything, guys, leads into another. I mean, there really is no more off-season any longer. It's great for us. I mean, the fact that you've got, as you guys mentioned earlier, a little bit about baseball, day baseball and early start times that lead into basketball and hockey and tournament games is terrific for us. You've got a bunch of Derby prep races coming up, and on Saturdays we offer the $10,000 Twin Q. You've got the Oaks on that Friday for a $10,000 Twin Q. The Derby, we've got our Derby seminar the night before.
I was just going to ask you that.
In the book, our draft party coming up. So if you're a racing sports fan, come on down. And as we've talked about, guys, get signed up for STN Mobile because with all these cool things going on and all these sports and racing events happening at different times, it just brings the racing sports book to the palm of your hand.
Plus, you get rewards on every bet you make.
You do, and you can use those rewards for the Oyster Bar, Dave.
Yeah,
so it's always a good thing.
Why not? If there's food involved and I'm going to get it discounted nicely, yeah, I'm in. Are you kidding?
I'll tell you, one of the things, Dave, we never say on the show, but if you're over 50, which both of us are.
Way over 50.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And you're a station's member, on Wednesdays they always have restaurants that you can dine with your points at half price. Yep. It's such a great deal. I know the Oyster Bar, I love to get the pan roast at half price. You can't beat that. I love it at full price, but at half price it's even better.
Down for the radio shows on Mondays because he's enjoying lunch so much usually.
Yeah, listen, I don't drive as much as I used to because of the eye issue, but I don't mind getting out there on Mondays to get the seafood before the show. The only thing is,
great.
You need
it's a really good, really good seafood restaurant, and enjoy the fact that you like it, and encourage all the guests to come out and enjoy it as well.
Chuck, it's always a pleasure. We will talk to you next Monday prior to the national championship game. How's that?
Sounds